If you have a story you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. Back when I got my first apartment, I was working at a retail store and I didn't make a lot of money. So I tried to get a lot of cheap used stuff to furnish my place, which meant a lot of thrift store shopping and Craigslist scrolling. I found several great buys on there too. I got a practically new couch and chair. I got a kitchen set with pots and skillets, and even some window blinds. I had an older TV that my dad let me take from their place since they didn't really use it. However, it had a pretty bad screen burn. It went from rarely being used to being used daily, and it was an older tube TV, so it was bound to happen. So I started browsing Craigslist again to see if I could find a cheap flat screen. Even if it was older or not in the best condition, I thought it was better than nothing. So after passing up several ads that were asking for too much or too far away, I finally found one that was within my range. The title said it was a 32-inch LG, and all they wanted for it was $50. They included a few pictures of it as well, and it appeared there was nothing wrong with it, so I was trying to figure out what the catch was. I messaged them inquiring about it, and their reason made sense. They said they were moving out of state, so they were more so just trying to get rid of a bunch of stuff so they didn't have to take it with them. I thought this was a total win for me and started making plans to pick it up. I was planning to get it the next day because I still needed to get the cash, but they were adamant I pick it up that day because they were going to be busy. No problem. I just had to run over to the bank and drive out there, hopefully beating rush hour. I went and pulled out cash from an ATM to make it faster, but that meant that I would be giving them $60 instead of $50, since it couldn't do an odd amount. That was fine though, since I was still getting this TV for a steal. I then set up my GPS to the address given and made my way there. The place was about 40 minutes away in a city I had rarely been to, so I was going to be heavily relying on my GPS. When it said I had arrived, I had to go around the block as I had apparently driven right by it. By the third time, I finally slowed down and paid attention to the numbers on the surrounding houses to make sure I didn't miss it. Then I realized I was at the correct place, but it was easy to miss, because it was an abandoned house. There was a nice light blue house next to it, and then a smaller rundown home. One of the windows was boarded up. The front door looked like it was either missing or off the hinge because I couldn't see one. There was a driveway, but there were no cars in it, nor parked on the side of the road. It may sound stupid, but I was trying to be reasonable in thinking that they did say they were moving. Maybe they were clearing out and renovating this place, and they were getting rid of stuff left behind here? Or maybe the place was condemned, but squatters were living there, and maybe authorities caught them and told them they had to leave. I was trying to convince myself any way I could that this was reasonable until I saw someone walk over and stand in the doorway. It was a disheveled-looking woman. She had on some beat-up-looking hoodie with her hair in a bun. She then turned to look back in the house, then looked back and pointed to my car. That's when I saw a guy approach the door. This guy looked a little more intimidating. He was easily twice my size, also in a hoodie, but had it pulled up so I could barely make out a face. The guy started walking down the steps, this whole time while he was looking in my direction. Finally, my gut told me I needed to get the hell out of there, so I burned out. This didn't stop the guy from running towards my car as I drove away. I kept looking in my rear view the whole way home to ensure I wasn't being followed home. When I got back, I went to my computer and looked at the listing a little further. I zoomed in on the pictures, and the first thing that caught my attention was that it said the TV was an LG, yet the logo I saw had a V on it. So this was not even an LG. Then I noticed the window to the left of the TV. It was looking out to a street with a house across from it, and the porch railing had snow on it. This occurred in May, so there was no snow in sight, and there were no houses across from the one I went to. It was an apartment complex and a few small shops. The house also didn't have a porch, let alone a railing. I obviously had some tunnel vision occurring and didn't really inspect or notice anything in the pictures beyond the TV. I don't know if this was a picture they took elsewhere or just one they took from the internet, or hell, maybe even another listing on Craigslist. I was disappointed that I didn't get the TV, but even more disappointed in myself for almost falling for what was obviously looking like a setup. I reported the listing and moved on. I ended up finding a TV at a local thrift store a week or two later and pushed past the incident until I heard a story on the news. They were talking about safety and precautions to take when meeting up with strangers, like from Craigslist, and for sale offers and newspaper listings. Then they mentioned how there was another couple that was attacked after responding to an ad on Craigslist. They were meeting up to get something when they were robbed at gunpoint, and one of them stole their car. Their car had their small child in it still. This event took place in the same city I went to for the TV. I was terrified and thought that it could have easily been the same people I saw, and if I was stupid enough to get out of the car, it could have been me. I know they weren't too smart taking their child with them, let alone leaving them in the car, but they were all unharmed as they abandoned the car too, probably because it came with a small child. Don't worry, this definitely steered me away from this kind of stuff. I still occasionally will get things listed on Nextdoor because at least I know the area, and typically only when I have one of my friends with me to help, just in case.
I have a weird story from when I was a little kid, probably somewhere around 8 years old. The town I lived in wasn't one that had a lot of crime or creepy things that happened, but there was always one place that seemed to always attract the only weirdos in town, and that was a local Walmart. Now, I'm not going to talk trash about Walmart. There's enough other people that do that already. And I do shop there pretty frequently, but I'm going to say that, for some weird reason, Walmart always attracts people that are out there. This happened on a late night trip to Walmart to get a few things. I honestly don't even remember what we needed to get. I just remember it being super late and Mom told me that we needed to go. I got my tired back end in the car and we headed out. We got there and things went as normal. She took way too long to find what she needed, and we spent way too much time browsing at things that we weren't there for. It was just how she was, honestly, and I was just there for the ride, and because there was no one else to watch me. At one point, my mom needed to use the restroom, so we walked to the back where the shoe selection was, and she told me to stay with the cart. No 8-year-old boy wants to go into the public restroom with his mother, so I did what she asked and stood outside the room with the cart. While I was standing there, I noticed a woman looking at the shoes and looking like she was trying to figure out what to buy. Nothing out of the ordinary, really. But when she stood up from the lower shelf and started to walk away, I noticed that her wallet had fallen out of her purse and she didn't seem to notice, because she was walking further down the aisle. At that point, I kind of just went into, I need to be a helpful person mode, and I ran over to grab the wallet and shouted for her. As soon as I said, "Ma'am, you dropped your wallet." She turned around and walked over with what I thought was a happy look. I handed her wallet, and she just kind of stared at me with a smile that was kind of creepy. After a moment, she said, "Thank you, young man. I appreciate that," and then leaned down and gave me a hug. Again, I was 8, so I just kind of accepted it and thought she was really nice and friendly. But then, after a few seconds, the hug kind of got to be a bit too much, and I started feeling awkward, like she was hugging me for way too long, kind of awkward. A few moments passed and she finally lets go, and then she reaches down to grab my hand and said, "That was so nice of you to help me like that. Why don't you come with me and I'll get you something nice for your troubles?" Now, being a kid, I was interested in what this nice thing was going to be, but I had also been taught about stranger danger. Of course, there were some conflicting thoughts in the situation because this was just a nice lady about the age of my mother, and she was just being nice, right? There was no way that she was a creepy person that was going to hurt me. Thankfully, my mom came out of the bathroom at that right moment in time to see this lady holding my hand and start to pull me away. And she confronts her, basically yelling and asking what the hell she was doing. It actually didn't end in just a few words being shouted between my mom and this woman. This woman started screaming back about how my mom was so irresponsible and didn't deserve me as her child. She then reached in her bag and pulls out a container of pepper spray and shoots my mom in the face with it. At this point, there's a small crowd of other people starting to surround us, and a few employees had run over to see what was going on. By the time the crowd formed and people were trying to figure out what was going on, the woman had already started running. One of the employees tried to stop her, but they showed up too late and didn't see where she had gone. They ended up calling an ambulance for my mom because they didn't know what to do about the pepper spray, and they insisted that they needed to get a medic there just in case she was seriously injured. My mom ended up being fine, obviously, and the medics got her cleaned up and left. Unfortunately, no one ever found the woman, and all they could do was offer the camera footage to the police. That was obviously the most exciting trip to Walmart we had ever gone on, and was not something that we really ever talked about to this day.
I've been the man behind the bar for a significant portion of my life, mostly because it pays the bills, lets me work odd hours of the day, and you get to meet new and interesting people, though the last one may have varying definitions for some people out there. But honestly, I've met some really cool people, and even a handful of celebrities while serving drinks, and I dig it. Of course, you have the occasional crappy patron, and sometimes you have to deal with fights, but most bars and clubs hire the big muscle guys to take care of those problems, so you just have to be smart enough to not get involved and to inform security if things get out of hand. The bar I work at has a small radio system for employees of the club. Basically, it's a walkie-talkie system that allows us to contact each other without having to leave our stations. If I have a customer wanting to know where their deep-fried cheese curds are, I can grab the radio and ask the kitchen for an ETA. If we have a band playing, I can radio over to the booth and let them know what it sounds like from my side. On top of this, if we have a customer or patron that is out on the floor and looks like they're getting too hammered, I can call out to security and the other bartenders and inform them that the guy with the skull shirt and blue jeans is cut off, and we can all act as a unit behind the counter. It's probably one of the best things that this club has implemented, if you ask me. The story I want to tell you is one where this radio really held up its end and made our jobs easier and potentially saved someone from a horrible situation. This was several years ago. It was a pretty typical night. I think there was some DJ playing a dance set for the bar, and quite a few patrons were out that night. Whenever we have DJs, we usually get a bunch of couples out wanting to get wasted and have fun, first dates, and, for some reason, a lot of middle-aged women that get super loud. The people that were involved in this were probably in the first or second category, but it was a group with 2 guys and 2 ladies. One of the couples walked up to the bar. The young lady ordered, I think, a strawberry daiquiri. He ordered a couple shots for their friends over on the other side of the room. She pulls out her credit card and asks me to start a tab for them. I grab it and ask for her ID, all basic stuff. She checks out, and all goes as expected. He tells her to take them over to the friend so they don't have to walk over, and she excitedly agrees. As soon as she walks away, he looks me dead in the eyes and drops a small baggie on the counter, then says, "How much to add this into her drink?" I was clearly taken aback by the fact that he would ask. Then he drops a couple $100 on the counter and nods towards the baggie. Obviously, I wasn't going to add this into her drink, and I was ready to knock this asshat out myself, but I grab the bag and the money and tell him to take the rest of the shots over to the friends. He stares at me confused, but then I tell him that he can't be around when I do it, otherwise he'll look guilty. At first, he didn't seem to understand, but after processing it for a few moments, he smirks and nods, then starts to walk toward the group. The second he stepped away from the counter, I grabbed my radio and called for all security. I literally told them that I had an attempted drugging and that management needed to call the police and security would need to detain him, and gave his description: black short-cut hair, blue-collared button-down, khakis. As soon as they both confirmed that they were all doing what was requested, I stepped out from behind the bar and walked up to the group, then got her attention. At first, the guy seemed a bit suspicious of me, but I calmed his suspicion when I said to the whole group, "Your drinks are coming up shortly, but the system said your card was declined. Any of you other lovely folks have a card for the tab? I'd hate for your party to end here." Then threw a wink over at the jackass. The lady friend pulled out a card and tried to hand it to me. I mentioned that I needed them to come over to the bar so I could get the ID for her card, and told the potential victim that she needed to come get her card back. They both followed me over to the counter. The whole time she was saying how confused she was about the card being declined and all that. As soon as we got back to the bar and I got to my station, I grabbed the radio and told security to proceed. They approached the 2 other guys, and while I have no idea what was said, I saw that they were motioning toward the door. After a few seconds, the one jackass started yelling about how they weren't going anywhere, and, of course, a small scuffle ensued. When I was certain that security had the 2 guys under control, I told the 2 ladies about what the one had asked me to do. I informed them that he had tried to slip me $200 to get me to drug their daiquiri. At first, I didn't think that they believed me, but I showed her the baggie and the money and told her that the police were on their way. I think the realization of the situation hit her right then, because she started to cry, and her friend was just sitting there with her mouth wide open. I tried to interject a bit in an attempt to get them talking and calming down. I asked how long they'd known the guys. She tells me that they had just started dating 2 weeks ago, and that he was a friend of the second guy, who turned out to be the female friend's husband. Apparently, she'd known him for years, but the 2 of them had just started dating because the couple had hooked them up. The cops showed up and pulled the ladies aside to discuss with them, and one of the officers asked me for what the guy gave me. I had no issue with handing it to him, and I told him that the manager would happily give them security camera footage from behind the bar. They then informed me that when they got there, the husband actually tried to fight off one of the officers and claimed that he had no idea what his friend was doing or that he had the drugs on him. Apparently, his friend then literally said in front of the police, "Bullshit, Dave. I literally bought it from you." So I have no idea what happened to that marriage or that friendship, but I was beyond grateful for the radio system that night. This was one of those situations that makes you think that even if you do know someone, you may not know their intentions.
Back when I was 14, my family and I went on a summer vacation down south. My aunt lived down that way, and we hadn't seen her for a few years, so my mom and dad decided that we would all drive down that way and stay with her. Of course, this was a long drive, and it was them, plus the 3 of us kids, so they decided to split the drive up into 2 or 3 days instead of just going straight the whole way. I was pretty excited because this meant that we'd be staying in a hotel, and staying in a hotel meant I get to go swimming in a pool. This may not sound like anything exciting to other people, but where I live, there are no public pools, and I got to go swimming maybe once or twice a year, and I honestly love swimming. We got on the road for what felt like forever, not stopping because my dad was a stickler for making the most out of the time on the road. We then got to the hotel that we were staying at, and I was psyched. It was way nicer than I expected it to be, and on the way to the elevator, I saw the pool. It was decent sized, and it had what looked like a small hot tub off to the side. I was just super excited to get out of the room and go into the pool, and we hadn't even got to our floor yet. As soon as we got to our room, which were the adjoining rooms with the in-between doors, I threw my bag on the floor and immediately grabbed my bathing suit, and then went over and asked my mom and dad if I could head down to the pool. At first, my dad told me that I needed to wait for him to go down there with me, but my mom basically told my dad to let me go down and enjoy it, and then they could head down a few minutes later. My dad seemed like he really didn't want to, but my mom could tell that I really wanted to go. She said that I could go so long as I took 2 of my siblings with me, and didn't do anything too crazy until they got there. I agreed and said that I would be as careful as I could until they came down. I ran down the stairs and made my way to the pool as quick as I could, with my 2 brothers lagging behind me. They didn't even change yet, so when we got down to the pool, they had to run into the restroom to get changed, and I immediately jumped into the pool. After I jumped in, I noticed that I wasn't alone in the room, and there was an employee that was cleaning up the area. As soon as I had jumped into the pool, he turned around to look at me and said, "Hey, no jumping in the pool," and I apologized. As soon as he heard me, and then saw me, he walked over to the pool and asked me where my parents were. I told him they were on their way down and that I had just beat them there, thinking that he was going to tell me that I couldn't be down there without an adult. As soon as I said this, he squatted down by the edge of the pool and was just sitting there staring at me. I had no idea what was going on, but I figured that he may have caught on that my statement was a lie. He repeated what I said to me, but it was in a tone and a way that was really creepy, like, "Oh, your parents are on their way down, huh? You sure about that, cutie?" I just kind of stood there and said, "Yeah, they're on their way." He then smirked and asked me how old I was. I responded with 14, which was true, and he just kind of laughed and stood back up. And then he made a comment that was truly freaky. He just shook his head and said, "I bet I could get you out of the pool and in my car before anyone ever noticed what happened to you." I literally just sat there and stared at him as he turned to walk away and went back to cleaning the windows as if he hadn't literally just told me he could kidnap me without issue. After a few moments of just sitting there, my two brothers ran into the room and jumped in beside me, and once again the man turned to say, "No jumping into the pool!" And they both apologized to him and then went on to swim. I wasn't really feeling much like swimming at that point, so I just sat in the water watching that man as he finished cleaning the glass. As he turned to leave, he made sure to make eye contact with me, and then winked saying, "I'll see you later." I just remember his tone and the way he smirked at me. It literally creeped me out. Thankfully, I didn't see this guy for the rest of the time we were there, since we were only there for the night and left pretty early in the morning. I never mentioned this to my parents or told anyone else about this, because I seriously didn't think anyone would do anything. Now I know that I should have reported it to them or to someone that worked there, but at the time I just didn't know what to say about it. To be completely honest, this whole situation was enough to make me never want to go swimming at a hotel ever again.
I have a story about a delivery driver that actually freaked me right the hell out when it happened, and is one of those stories that led me to actually being a bit paranoid when I order anything from anywhere. This happened a couple years ago in 2021, when the world was going absolutely crazy and I wasn't able to leave my house because I had COVID. The pandemic was already pretty well underway at this point, and I think it was April or so, and I was about a week out from getting my shot when I had apparently slipped up around some people I knew and caught it. My fault, I blame myself entirely, and it absolutely sucked. Do not recommend it. That said, I was already pretty well established with the world of grocery delivery, as I had driven for one for the delivery companies for a bit in 2020 when I was laid off from my office job and had relied on them after I was finally brought back into my company as a remote employee. Thankfully, the time between these two events was only 4 months, so unemployment, driving for DoorDash, and begging my parents for rent money was enough to keep me afloat. When I wasn't able to get out and get groceries or food for myself, I would put in orders to have them delivered. If I may say, this service is something that I absolutely love, and I still use it to this day, even though I'm fine and my life has gone mostly back to normal. Most of the time, the drivers are decent at what they do. They will pick up what you ordered, bring it to your house, and will leave it on your front porch, or just outside your door. I live in an apartment complex, so sometimes they will contact me and ask me to come out and get it, and sometimes they will come into the building and leave it at the front door. I live on the bottom level, so it's not like they have to go up or down stairs at all. They just walk in, turn left, and I'm right there. However, if they ask me to come outside and get my order, I will. I get that they are in a rush and sometimes they just want to get it over with quickly, and I respect that. Unfortunately, as I said, I ended up getting sick. When it hit me like a literal bus. I was barely able to get off the couch. I couldn't really speak, and I was coughing so hard that the room would spin when I stopped. That was just the first 3 days. After that, it honestly felt like it was getting worse, and I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to come out of it. Despite feeling like I was at my end, I was also craving Cheetos, and I had been one of the lucky ones that hadn't really lost my sense of taste, so I really wanted Cheetos. I figured I could get a delivery of a few things that wouldn't perish and just kind of let it sit outside my door until I got the strength to get up and get it that afternoon. I decided that having it delivered at around 3 would give me time to get up at 1, stop myself from falling over for an hour as I walked to the door, and grab it by the time it got there. I put the order into the app and requested the time for delivery, setting an alarm on my phone for 3 p.m. just in case I didn't wake up to it. I also added a note that I needed them to deliver the groceries to my door as I was positive and probably contagious, and I would not be able to meet them in the parking lot to collect the items. I emphasized that I was sick several times in my notes, hoping that the driver would see it and would get the hint to come in and leave the items. I put the order in around 9 and requested the 3 p.m. delivery, and then went to the couch and passed out. Unfortunately, I was out, and I slept through my alarm. I, however, did not sleep through the sound of my front door opening. At first, I thought it was just the delivery driver knocking or hitting the door, but as I opened my eyes, I saw some random guy slowly walking into my apartment through the front door. Now, I will say that I was not fully there. I thought I was hallucinating at first, or dreaming that this was happening. But when I looked over and saw him reaching over to rifle through my jacket's pocket, I realized what he was doing, and it clicked that this was very real. I sat up as quickly as I could and asked what the hell he was doing. He jumped and turned pale and basically threw my groceries into my apartment and ran away without as much as a word. I think I sat there for close to 20 minutes just staring at my scattered groceries, trying to piece together what all had happened. I was completely uncertain as to whether or not that was normal. Was he just coming in to drop off my stuff? Why was he going through my jacket? Like I said, I was completely out of it. So I just assumed it was normal and moved on to getting up to get my Cheetos. It wasn't until I was sitting there eating my junk food that it really hit me what had happened. He was taking advantage of the fact that I said I was sick, and he was trying to rob me. That guy came in hoping I would be passed out, and he was looking for my wallet, and I caught him in the act. Even worse, he probably could have followed through and just told me he was dropping my food off, and I wouldn't have been coherent enough to really say anything about it. That's how out of my mind I was at that moment. I called the delivery company and notified them that the driver had come into my apartment, and they really didn't seem to care. Ever since that happened, I've always made sure to lock my door or at least connect the chain when I order anything for delivery. But thankfully, there haven't been any more events like that, and I hope there never are. So that, my friends, was another scary story collection, and today we also had a friend joining us, Miss 242 Reads. So if you did like what you heard from her and you want to hear more, then do check out her channel. I will have it linked in the description below. And if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. And of course, lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts or let me know how you're doing today. How's your day been? Anything exciting happen or anything bad happen you want to talk about? I'm here for it all. And with that being said, my friends, I hope you have a fantastic week. And until next time, take care.